cakes.
If you're looking for me, you better check under the sea, 'cause that is where you'll find me, underneath the sea.
Welcome to Water Damage with your host, Gil Mancha. This is my chronological discussion of the King of the Seven Seas, Aquaman. Disclaimer, I will be actively getting and collecting issues as we go, and I'm trying to only cover issues that I have a physical copy of or are in some collected edition. I'm going to try to stray away from digital because I love physical media, but the DC Universe Infinite app would be a great way to keep up with the podcast. Be sure to hit the follow button on Spotify or your preferred platform to get episodes as soon as they drop. In today's episode, we're covering Adventure Comics 262, The Undersea Hospital. Links will be in the podcast notes. This issue was released on May 28th, 1959. Let's take a look back at what else was happening that day in history.
Do it again!
On this day, the best-selling single was Kansas City by Wilbert Harrison, and top movie was Some Like It Hot. You know, sometime we'll have to make a playlist of these songs on Spotify. I admit I won't be too thrilled with these songs till we get closer to the late 60s and 70s. Popular toys have changed from the last episode to photoelectric baseball, toy guns, bass, cat miniature basketball, and Fisher-Price Little People. Well, okay, the last one is the same. The economy is booming, unemployment was low, consumerism high, mortgages cheap, and the government started building highways. The song still has an older feel to me, but if you're familiar with the song or the top movie of the time, let me know on Spotify. On the Spotify app at least, you have a Q&A section where you can reply to my question of what do you think of this issue. You can do it there, social media, or even the YouTube VOD of this issue. As for the toys, I had to look up half of them. The photoelectric baseball game is a board game that has an electric lamp to reveal the play results. Some of the toy guns had the orange tip, but some didn't. And they definitely look like the real deal. You definitely can't do that anymore. And probably shouldn't have back then. The baseball game looks like a dollhouse version of basketball, but I'm not really sure how it's played. We welcome people of all ages, so if you've played any of these as a youngster, I'd love to hear about it. That's a taste of what the world was like when Adventure Comics 262 was released. I'm reading this thanks to Showcase Presents Aquaman Volume 1, but it's also available on the Aquaman Archives Volume 1. As of recording, the issue is not available on the DC Universe Infinite app, so besides those two sources, I'm not sure where else you can find it commercially available. Just like the other issues we've covered here, Adventure Comics is an anthology of stories, and this is the second of 3. Definitely up from being last in 261. Again, it's called The Undersea Hospital. In the one panel, they're visible, and everything isn't shaded. The cat fins are green, possibly a darker green than the rest of his suit. That said, the Showcase Presents series is in black and white, so if that's your only access to it, you wouldn't know. The story was written by Robert Bernstein, penciled and inked by Ramona Fradden, with editor Mort Weisinger. This cover at Adventure Comics focuses on the Superboy story, so we'll focus on the first panel of the Aquaman story. The Aquaman name is written in red, I believe, but there isn't anything red or red-orange to compare to, so I can't say with 100% certainty. We see Aquaman in front of what looks like an underwater cage, while he and his octopus friend are putting up a sign that says Undersea Hospital. A smaller sign on the side says Free Medical Help. It's worth mentioning that Aquaman's wearing a patient's gown, not a doctor's lab coat, because it looks like it closes from the back, and he's colored entirely blue, so he's in the shade. He's also got a head mirror doctors used to wear when performing ear, nose, and throat exams. It's the headband with a metal circle on it. On the ground, we see several aquatic creatures wrapped up with bandages and slings. There's a seal, turtle, swordfish, shark, and even a walrus. On the ground with them is another sign that they've yet to put up, Dr. Aquaman in attendance. Aquaman's thought bubble basically says that just like humans, fish, by fish he means all aquatic life, need medical help when sick or injured. The sea creatures he's already helped will spread the word that now they have a place to get medical care. The text says that thanks to Aquaman, there's a place for sea life to experience the miracles of modern medicine, but little does the King of the Seven Seas dream that one day he himself will become a patient at the Undersea Hospital. That's really foreboding. Since this comic isn't on the DC Universe Infinite app, I can't read you guys the About This Book section. After the break, we'll summarize the issue.
Is Aquaman finished? Can you make it to the bathroom before we return with part 2 of the show?
What it do, guys? Manjoume here, and if you like board games, especially deck building games, you should check out Team_Thunder on YouTube. There we have unboxings and games of Legendary and Marvel deck building game, the DC deck building game, the Transformers deck building game, and many more. That's also where you can find VODs for this and Accelerated Visions, a Spider-Man 2099 podcast where you can directly leave a comment and we can discuss the issues.
The Superman Aquaman Hour of Adventure, featuring Aquaman, King of the Seven Seas, and your favorite comic book superheroes in their own adventure stories. It's 60 minutes of thrills and fun, next on most of these stations.
We start the comic one random afternoon where Aquaman notices his octopus friend Topo limping. This is personified with one tentacle in front and a glow just radiating off of it. Great goldfish, Topo, you sprained a tentacle. I'll bind it tightly to relieve the pain. I mean, he's limping, so I guess it's fair to think that it's sprained, but he was feet away, sitting on a sunken ship. Speaking of, he tears a cloth from the sail to bandage up the tentacle. As he's doing this, he's thinking about how his other aquatic friends might also need some sort of medical attention. Plenty, I'll bet. And that gives me an idea. The idea that the ailing or injured fish could use a doctor and a hospital. And that's where I'll help. With the help of his friends, they build an undersea hospital. We got a dolphin bringing in some wood boards, another with some cloth, and some whales with glass panes. 2 octopi are putting up the, quote, undersea hospital sign. As this is happening, he's thinking about how his friends are spreading the word, and they'll be just that. Friends, not patients. As happy as he'd be to help them, he'd be even happier if no one showed up if that meant that everyone was healthy. Too bad for him when the hospital opens, there's a line farther than the eye can see of sea creatures that needed the clinic. Luckily, he's armed with the doctor's head mirror and the ingenuity of the 7 seas. First up is a seal with a broken flipper. The fix? Setting the flipper with bandages and presumably some wood. His next case is a squirming shark. He's got a bad tooth which Aquaman notes is not easy to find among 3 rows of razor-sharp ivories. He's able to find the right one by looking at the way he's thrashing with his tail in pain when Aquaman gets to that one specific tooth. Finding it was only half the battle. The rest is the extraction, and is he going to use some pliers? No, he uses the claws of a live lobster friend to grab it. Now the underworld hospital drives up. Before we can discuss who's in it, we need to talk about what we mean by underworld ambulance, and by the looks of it, it's literally a wooden boat, which you'd go fishing in with a red cross on it, some seaweed wheels, a stretcher, presumably made of seaweed, and is being pulled by 4 dolphins, which Topo is there to see the patient when it arrives. Topo has a Red Cross armband on all of its arms. The patient in question is a sick dogfish. After a quick examination, he decides to fill the underwater aquarium with salt water. He'd chase a catfish into fresh water, and the lack of salt made him sick. This reminds me of the time on The Simpsons when Homer got a lobster to feed and plumpen up. The lobster needs salt water, so he adds salt, which also hurts the fish. Then he adds water, which hurts the lobster, so eventually he gets an equal amount of both, and they're both kinda dead. Still odd, because Aquaman is able to pour a bag of salt into the aquarium, all while underwater. That much kind of reminds me of how SpongeBob is underwater, but they still have a beach. I want to say Goo Lagoon? The next patient is a turtle whose head is stuck in its shell, and I'm not sure if this is the best fix, but he grabs a swordfish and uses the point of its sword to pry his noggin out. Next it says, 50 minutes and 50 patients later, which I think implies that he's been able to take care of a patient per minute, which is absolutely ludicrous to think that he's been that productive. Next is an electric eel that keeps discharging electricity, causing other fish to swim away out of fear of being shocked. His idea leads him to a nearby wreck, possibly the same one from the beginning of the issue. It had a cargo of crude rubber that a cutlass fish assists in cutting a large sheet. He then wraps the eel in the rubber sheet to insulate it like copper wire, which really just seemed to be a short-term fix, but it could be a short-term problem. No time, because a whale comes up with a fever so high he's spouting live steam instead of water from his blowhole. Luckily, Aquaman has chipped off some ice from a passing glacier and puts it and the whale into a tank of water. We don't get to see the results of this because Topo, chief of his surface patrol, informs him of trouble, so he goes up to the surface. pirates are raiding a floating astronomer's observatory, likely to steal the telescope lens, which is worth a fortune. To stop them, he makes a whirlpool to make them dizzy. Keep in mind they're dressed in suits, not normal pirate gear, so if they hadn't called them pirates, I wouldn't have actually guessed that as the word. Look out! We're entering a maelstrom! Where'd it come from? It wasn't here a minute ago. Then they start getting dizzy from the whirlpool. It's Aquaman! Blast him! He's drawn us into a whirlpool! We're trapped! Oh, I'm dizzy. I'm blacking out. Aquaman then reverses a whirlpool, and the thief's ship hits the observatory. I'm sick. I can't stand up. Here's where we get our quote of the issue.
What's the matter, Aquaman?
I don't know. The fish are trying to tell me something.
Neither can I. But Aquaman will pay for his interference with his life. The second pirate pulls out a gun and shoots up Aquaman. Vrata, ta-ta, ta-ta, ta-ta-ta. This man chooses violence today, and there's no aquatic friend, no turtle to shield him, nothing to prevent it. Moments later, we see that they left Aquaman's bullet-ridden body floating in the water. One man from the observatory says, he's going down. Aquaman's thinking, this is the end. I can't swim a stroke. I'm losing consciousness. No one can help me now. No one. As his body glides down toward the seafloor, multiple sea creatures flock toward him. 2 eels stiffen themselves, and they use seaweed to make a stretcher for Aquaman, held by octopi. Once they get to the Undersea hospital, lanternfish illuminate the operating room. Several electric eels shock him to act as anesthetic. Octopi squeeze his arms to tourniquet them. This lets the swordfish surgeons probe his body looking for bullets, and the suckerfish to suck out the lead slugs. Following this, jellyfish apply healing balm to his wounds. Going back to the shipwreck, sharks tear strips of sailcloth and crabs roll it into bandages. Once finished, they bring him back to the surface, lying on a whale's back to rest. For days, his body stayed there, the aquatic friends cooling him under the hot sun until one day, I'm alive. I've been operated on, bandaged, nursed back to health. My sea creature friends doctored the doctor. A few days after that, he's been fully healed and back to being a doctor himself. Little did I dream that a hospital built for others would save my life. Guess my fish friends felt that one good turn deserves another. Next patient, please. The last scene shows a lot of aquatic friends that need help, but he's more than willing to help. The end. After the break, we'll go over some thoughts and feelings about the issue.
Wait a minute. That was no joke. Somebody tried to kill me. That or we're not paying Mr. Slippery enough. Holy Neptune's trident. This has to be the work of the Legion of Doom. Hey, there's an echo inside my head. Echo. Echo. Echo.
You okay, Aquaman?
Echo. What? Oh, no problem.
This issue has more of the problem/quick fix gimmick that we've seen in the past, like Aquaman joins the Navy and Aquaman duels the Animal Master. But here we have a simple but clever fix to whatever ails the aquatic creatures. It was crazy to both see a pirate dressed in a suit shoot up Aquaman like a mobster, leaving him riddled with bullets, and had the sea creatures not come to his aid, Aquaman straight up would have died. I wonder if this is the closest he's gotten to dying without actually being killed. I'm sure at some point in his history we'll see him be ended, but this is probably the earliest example of it. I've also got tonal whiplash from the silly Aquaman pulling a shark tooth with lobster claws to being filled with bullets and almost dying. The rest of the comic was quick, but kind of par for the course, especially since we already had spent most of our time with the aquatic creatures being treated like people by unconventional methods, so doing so at the end kinda tracks. I enjoyed this issue, but this is probably the last we'll see of the Undersea Hospital. What do you think? Did you read the comic? Did I get something wrong? If I did and you guys correct me, I'll include a corrections section in the next episode and I'll credit the user. Let's continue the discussion on social media and the YouTube VOD. You can find me at ManjoumeThunder on Twitter and at Team_Thunder on YouTube. If you're looking for another podcast to listen to and want to learn more about the Spider-Man of the future, check out Accelerated Visions, a Spider-Man 2099 podcast on Spotify and anywhere you can find podcasts. Manjoume out.
Whew, man. Glad that stopped before things got worse.